Okay, so let's have a look at my round 3 game. And here I'm playing well, yeah, I guess quite a talented youngster. I think he's not that young. He's maybe 17 or 18. So, a few years younger than me. But okay, rated 2174, so almost master level. And he actually had beaten a GM in the first round of this tournament, which obviously pretty impressive. So, yeah. A lot of the players here, I think, were pretty underrated, so you have to kind of take everybody seriously. So, okay, so I played e4 this game, and if you remember in my first round I played knight f3, so yeah, I try to stay a little bit unpredictable. But okay, so e4, e5, and I played knight c3. So yeah, I've made some videos before where I played the similar system, and yeah, in other games my opponents have played knight f6, and my opponent chose a different move here, knight c6, which is, it's just as good. So, just as good as knight f6, I think. And okay, so this is all pretty normal. Bishop c4, knight f6. And here, white should play d3, which is what I played. The very typical trick that is kind of well known here is if white plays knight f3, black can take on e4. And this is basically already, like, black is completely fine. Doesn't have any problems. So, yeah, so d3, winning that, and my opponent chose a pretty interesting way to develop his pieces here. Like, definitely the most natural move would be bishop c5. If black wants to be very ambitious, black can play knight a5 and go after the bishop. So this is something that I have looked at, this knight a5 idea, and how white should play there. He just played bishop e7, which surprised me a little bit. I mean, it's a good enough developing move, but it's not the most active square for the bishop. But, I mean, yeah, the position is such that this is kind of a very minor detail, so, I mean, position should be equal in this position, and maybe, like, after bishop e7, it's very, very slightly preferable for white. So, okay, I played the natural move, knight f3. Now he cannot play knight a5 while his pawn on e5 is hanging, so he'll have to play d6 first, and then when he plays d6, this bishop is going to be stuck behind his pawns. So that's what I'm aiming for. And now black castled. So actually this is the first moment where I had a bit of a think, because, I mean, the obvious move is to castle. But, yeah, I was thinking a little bit, how do I want to try and put pressure in this position? Because I know my opponent's next move is going to be d6, and after that he will be planning knight a5, and he'll also be planning bishop g4. And that can be combined with knight d4. So bishop g4, knight d4 could be a pretty serious idea now that my bishop is outside of my pawn chain and cannot come back to break the pin. So yeah, I thought for a little bit, and I did end up castling, which I think it might be very slightly not the most accurate way to play here. Although, I mean, this is pretty subtle. I think the best way forward to play, which I did consider, so I want to give myself some credit here. I considered playing like super prophylactically here, so just play h3, so stopping bishop g4. And then after black plays d6, now he wants to play knight a5 to just play a3. So this kind of super prophylactic way to play is actually, I think, correct for white, like after having analyzed this afterwards. The main idea is after bishop e6, so now we're basically stopping all of black's plans. Like, bishop g4 is not a thing anymore, knight a5 doesn't do anything, so I'll just play bishop a2. So, really the only reasonable developing move left is bishop e6. And then, obviously, we're not going to take, which just opens up this rook and helps black control the center a little bit more. No, instead we just play knight d5. And, I mean, it resembles some kind of a Italian opening, where, this bishop has been stuck on this passive square instead of the normal square, c5. And white has, for some reason, developed his knight really early to c3, so normally in the Italian, this knight stays on b1, and white has played c3, and it's some kind of knight maneuver like this, or, to c4 or something like that. But yeah, actually, having the knight on c3, I realized that it lets white play in this kind of slow way with h3 and a3, because black can never really open up the center very early. So because we've developed our knight to c3, black, really is going to have a very hard time playing d5. So that gives you time to play this kind of very slow, artificial-looking moves, h3 and a3. And yeah, the reason I rejected this was I just thought, like, this surely cannot be correct to play. This kind of goes against all of the opening principles that I know. But yeah, here it's a little bit more concrete than that. We're trying to just stop what black is trying to do. So yeah, I had a bit of a think. I thought for 4 minutes, and I ended up castling anyway. And now I think it is basically about equal. Because after d6, black is going to be able to play either bishop g4 or knight a5, and have, I think a pretty reasonable position. And I mean, the pin is not necessarily super dangerous, but now that white has castled, we'll have to be a little bit mindful of the knight coming to d4 and then having our pawn structure damaged there. So, although I do want to point out that if anybody is familiar with Capablanca games, there's a very famous game where Capablanca was black against, I believe, Winter Williams. And his opponent went for this quick bishop g4 and knight d4 thing. So let's say white plays like a3 here. In the game I played h3. But something like this could happen. Like after here, now we throw this in, the bishop comes to h5, and Capablanca basically let black play knight, or let his opponent play knight to d4. It was colors reversed, so white had a bishop on g5 and played knight to d5, and this bishop was outside the pawn chain. So let's say white even just makes a nothing move here. You just play rook e1. And knight d4 actually, black doesn't want to rush with this. This can be a pretty big strategic mistake because of this idea g4. This is what happened in that Capablanca game, and after they traded knights, this bishop was basically stuck in jail over here, and it was actually even worse because Capablanca was able to play bishop g5 and then take on f6. This bishop was also outside the pawn chain, and his opponent had to take back with doubled pawns and leave this bishop basically marooned here for the whole game. So anyway, that's kind of a long-winded explanation of how this bishop g4 idea you don't have to be so afraid of. Because this bishop is on e7, you wouldn't be able to get that same doubling of the structure. But yeah, that's something that I think is important to think about here. So yeah, I probably could have or should have played a3 or a4, but okay, I played h3 instead. And now after knight a5, I think now this is just about equal. And the positions that I have studied, so we got a4, takes. White can be better in this structure, but usually you need to have your pieces arranged differently. Kind of the ideal setup for white here would be for this knight to be on e2, and actually for this king to be on the queen side. So it would be ideal if we had played b3, and then queen d3, bishop e3, and white had castled queen side, and this knight is on e2 instead of f3. There, kind of white is going to be very harmoniously placed, and we can actually play for a quick f4 break to open up the king side. And this little constellation of pawns, once this one goes to b3, really actually makes it difficult for black to open up the queen side. So this king will be very safe on b2 after white plays b3. So yeah, I kind of knew that was the ideal setup, and I figured that white probably has nothing here, which is correct. So now we just kind of have an equal position. And yeah, so these next few moves are very natural. Bishop e6, b3. My opponent plays knight d7. So he wants to play f5. I really can't stop this plan. In the ideal version for white, when this knight is on e2 and this king is on b2, we could usually meet f5 with a very quick f4 break. And black actually can be under a little bit of pressure there. Kind of the main thing that white is going for here is this d5 square is going to be an excellent outpost for the knight. And if you ever play c6, that's going to weaken the pawn on d6. So, I can play bishop a3 at some point to go after this pawn. If I play knight d5, you play c6, and I get to take on e7 and then play bishop a3, this pawn on d6 can be very, very weak. But if you don't ever play c6, then the knight on d5 is very annoying, because it's always going to attack c7, which makes it difficult for black to kind of coordinate his pieces. But yeah, here with white's king already committed to the king side and this knight not really being on a great square here, this is really just about equal. There's nothing going on here. So, okay, so yeah, I think here I had another small think, another 3 or 4 minutes, because I wanted to try and figure out what's the best way to deal with this f5 plan. And I played what I thought was a reasonable enough try, queen e2. So now after f5, I'm going to take, bishop takes, and I played knight d5. This is basically my idea. Now this knight is going to be pretty strong here, and I'm just going to kind of be ready to centralize my pieces and try and put some pressure on black here. And another pretty typical tactical idea in these positions, that rook takes f5 is not really that great because of knight d4. So that's one of the points of queen e2. So he takes the bishop, knight d5. And here I would say he started to drift a little bit. So like I was completely expecting knight f6, and I mean you just want to get rid of one of my best pieces here, and then like this should be completely equal. I mean maybe black is even slightly more comfortable there, because you've already opened up the f-file, and I mean really this bishop on this diagonal is going to be pretty strong attacking c2. If this queen ever gets to g6, like white has to be a little bit careful. I mean, it should still be equal with correct play, but I think white has to be a little bit more careful. We played bishop f6. I was very happy to see this because now it's going to be difficult to challenge this knight. If you play knight b6, then I can always consider retreating. I'm just saying your knight is very passive on b6. And now if you play c6, you're going to weaken the d6 pawn, and then it didn't make a lot of sense for you to put the bishop on f6 because it's going to be needed to defend this. It also just blocks the rook. I mean, yeah, I think this is like a pretty poor positional decision. So now I was getting a little bit optimistic. Maybe I can do better. So I played bishop b2, just developing, and I want to play rook c1 or k1. If I get time, then later knight d2, knight d4, and play for f4, right? Just open up the position. And yeah, he started to think for a little bit here, because I think he realized that his position was a little bit difficult. At least, it's hard to find like an obvious natural move here for black. So he thought for quite a long time here, actually, like 17 minutes, I think. Which, yeah, as I said earlier, like if somebody thinks for a long time, it's usually a sign that they don't really see anything obvious that they like in the position. So yeah, there's really no tactics to calculate here. Like e4 is not really, I mean, it's not really a great move. There's lots of ways that I can deal with this. I can just take, if I really want to, and put the knight on d4. And yeah, I mean, this pawn is very easy to blockade. I mean, I could also play knight d4 right away. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, basically, this move e4 doesn't really lead too much to anything that serious. It also, I mean, it's just going to block this bishop, so you don't have access to this target on c2 anymore. So after thinking for a while, he plays bishop e6, which, okay, I mean, yeah, I think it's a reasonable move. After knight e3, you're not going to get hit with a tempo anymore, and I thought, yeah, maybe, he wants to, I guess, eventually play c6, and then kick this knight out. At least that's what I was guessing. So, okay, so I played rook a d1, and yeah, he surprised me again a little bit here. He played a5, which I thought was, I mean, I understand why, because, like, actually here I thought a little bit if I want to play a5 myself, but I just decided, no, because when I centralize my rooks, if he plays c6, this pawn is just going to become a target. So, and I wasn't really worried about him playing a5, because I think that pawn will be more weak over there. So he plays a5, and yeah, I was pretty happy to see this too, because like I could, in a lot of cases, play like queen d2, just to gain a tempo on this pawn, if this rook moves out. And you don't really want to also play with like b6. It's going to start really weakening your queen side. Like, as if you play b6, then playing c6 is going to be even more weakening. The b6 pawn will be weak. So, yeah, I was getting more optimistic here, and I played knight d2, which I think is still fine. So I'm just continuing to improve my position. I didn't play rook e1 yet because I'm not sure. Maybe I want to play for f4. But I definitely know this knight on f3 should be on e4, so we do that. And he really surprised me here. So I thought, like, for sure, I thought he would play c6. I mean, and then at least then, like, I can take on f6. I thought something like this might happen. I mean, and I mean, maybe it's not so bad, but no, it looks like you can get your queen out and centralize the rooks. And I mean, maybe here's c5 as a move, which actually might be a pretty good point. I mean, you might take with the rook. Maybe take the rook on e4. So yeah, I mean, this position actually is difficult. Like, I think I mean, the alternative, you could just take this. This might be the easiest solution. Because then, I mean, black is not really much worse here. Like, you have an open F file, you've closed this down, and now you can go about activating your queen here. But yeah, I noticed he was a little bit reluctant, or he was very reluctant to trade off his light square bishops. He was kind of like really guarding his bishops like that. So yeah, he played rook c8, which struck me as an incredibly passive move. Like this is definitely not a move that I would ever play, even if it was the best move. I would never play rook c8 because that's too passive for me. And yeah, that was also after another long thing, so over 18 minutes on that move. So yeah, I was feeling much more confident here. And I mean, White can still play natural moves here, knight e4, and ask Black how he wants to continue. So now, you know, I can seriously consider playing f4. Just open up this diagonal, open up my rook, and I have a lot of pressure on his bishop on f6 now. So he plays queen e8, and I think this is probably the critical moment of the game. So I made the wrong decision here. I did consider the best move, but yeah, if you want to have a think about this position, I'll give you a little bit of time. So, I mean, definitely one of the questions that has to be figured out here is, does White have time to kind of put his pieces on more optimal squares before Black is able to untangle? And I thought the answer was definitely yes. Like, I thought there was really no rush to play f4, or the other break is c5. So I considered both of those moves. There's really no rush to play both of those, is what I thought, because, you know, I mean, Black is not even threatening to do anything. Like, Black is not even threatening to play queen g6, because then I can always take on f6 with this knight, and you're gonna have to run into knight e7 check later, right? So, you know, just like, even if White does nothing, like rook e1, queen g6, and Black is losing material here. I mean, you can't take this knight back because then you're gonna lose the queen. So, you know, I figured, okay, I mean, queen e8, Black still looks very passive. Like, this rook is not going anywhere, this rook is not going anywhere. You know, it doesn't look like any of these pieces are really doing anything. So I thought I have enough time just to play like queen d2, which is what I played. It turns out this is actually a big mistake, after which White unbelievably has no advantage. In fact, White is even worse after Black's next move, which like totally shocked me. So yeah, I did think for about 10 minutes here, and I mean, my idea is I want to attack a5, and the next move, like if you play b6, then I'll play f4. And this is like a much improved version for White, I thought. Because if I play f4 in this position, so what I looked at was probably Black is just going to take this, and then take on f4. And, I mean, yeah, I wasn't really sure how huge of an advantage this was. Like, I can take here and take here. And, I mean, we've kind of simplified a little bit. I mean, White's definitely more active, but I think probably Black should be, you know, more or less okay here. Even if you just trade this and maybe play like queen g6 or something. I mean, you know, next move, if you're able to just play rook f7 and then double, like, I wasn't entirely sure how much I was going to get out of this. And the other move to consider, which I did think about, was c5. Unfortunately, I didn't really consider this for long enough, or at least I didn't look at it deeply enough, because this is actually by far the strongest move. Like, White is a lot better after c5. And really the point is we're opening up the position, but also we want to try and distract this knight away from the king side. So like if Black plays knight takes c5, then we're going to take this bishop, force you to take back with a pawn, and then we take here and we play f4. So this is actually a pawn sacrifice. And yeah, like I saw we could get to this position, and I somehow didn't really think, you know, I didn't look further to see how powerful f4 was. Because yeah, once you see f4 here, I mean, this is actually really, really strong. You're threatening to win your pawn back right away. Taking this is really not a good idea, because after rook takes f4, you just open up this bishop, you open up this rook. f6 is going to be very difficult to defend. If you ever play f5, you're just going to open up this long diagonal. I mean, you know, Black is one false step away from being totally busted in that kind of position. So yeah, like already here after f4, Black really doesn't have good defenses. He probably just has to let White take here and then react with f5 to try and keep this diagonal closed. And then, you know, White got his pawn back. White has a really strong passed pawn on e5. So that's just going to be good for White. So yeah, that unfortunately I did not think about, at least for long enough. And yeah, I don't know, maybe it was a little bit of laziness on my part, because I just thought I have enough time. I mean, why do I need to look at anything that concretely? Queen d2. But actually, after my opponent's next move, black is like, I think black could be fighting for the advantage after his next move. So yeah, if you want to try and find this one is not easy. It looks like all of black's pieces are totally passive, and there's nothing he can do. I missed this move completely, but yeah, I guess my opponent might have been thinking about it for a few moves now. Because yeah, now that he played this move, his last move, Queen e8, made a lot of sense. So he might have been considering it before too. But yeah, the key is you need to get counterplay. So like you want to play Queen g6, but you can't do it right now. So you need to somehow solve that problem and be able to play Queen g6 next move. And the answer is the very surprising Bishop d8, which I was like completely flummoxed by when I played. I was like, what is this move? The point is not even to defend the a5 pawn. I mean, this is a really brilliant move. I have to give my opponent a lot of credit for finding this idea. I mean, it just looks so unnatural. You also box in your own work. You put like all of your pieces on the back rank here. I mean, but the real point is actually to play Queen g6. So like actually taking this pawn, I mean, Bishop d8 doesn't even stop Queen takes a5 because c6 doesn't even work. Like the queen will just go back, and if you take on d5, I'm going to take, and I'm going to threaten to win the bishop back. If you save the bishop, then I take here. I just even like win material there. You can't save the rook, right? It's a fork. But no, the real point is after queen takes a5, black is going to play queen g6. And white's actually close to being lost here, because bishop takes h3 is a massive threat. Bishop f5 is going to crack through to this diagonal and get the c2 pawn. I mean, this knight is hanging, right? So this is actually really, really bad. Like, if this knight moves anywhere, even here, queen takes c2 is already possible. And white's position is completely falling apart. Bishop is hanging, pawn is hanging. It's just terrible. So yeah, I was really shocked here, and yeah, I think one of my longest thinks probably of the whole tournament here. I thought for half an hour in this position, and I had to eventually come to the conclusion that I'm no longer better, which is a difficult thing to do, especially like from the position that I had a few moves ago. It looked like all of my pieces were perfectly placed, and all of a sudden, like after one move, I realize I'm no longer better because I can't stop queen g6. This is coming next, pretty much no matter what I play. So yeah, I thought for a long time here, and I did find like one of the best moves. I think there's a couple things white can play to keep the balance, but black is still going to be slightly better after anything, because queen g6 is coming, and then bishop f5, and I mean, white's pieces are going to get pushed back. So I played king h2, which is a prophylactic move. Now after queen g6, at least you're not threatening bishop takes h3. So yeah, after queen g6, I retreat knight g3. I really do not want to play a move like f3. Like I really barely even consider that, just because it weakens all these dark squares around my king, and this bishop is nowhere near defending those. So if I could get this bishop teleported over here, then sure. But already here, I would be a little bit nervous about some long-term pressure on these dark squares. I mean, it might have been playable, but yeah, I simply didn't want to do that. So I played knight g3, force allows bishop g5, and yeah, I really didn't like my position here. I didn't really. I mean, I knew after queen e2, I knew that he could play a really good move, which I was kind of guessing he wouldn't find, which he didn't. But yeah, like already in this position, white has to kind of be tricky and play moves like bishop c1 to try and bail out, which actually I didn't even consider bishop c1. I mean, the point is, if you take the queen, this will just be a queen trade. And these tactics end up working out for white. So if you take here, then I take, and this is just equal material, so white should be okay. And if you take my bishop, then I can take the rook. And yeah, I mean, this will be even good for white because you're going to be up the exchange. So yeah, and after bishop c1, like probably black could consider going away with his bishop, like maybe even bishop d8 back, and then or bishop h4, and just kind of say to white, all right, how do you want to improve the position? So yeah, I played queen e2, and I saw the best move for black here. So black does have a way to get what I think could just be a strategically winning position, which it's not a long variation. Like you only have to see 3 or 4 moves ahead. But yeah, you have to combine a little bit of tactics, a little bit of calculation with just positional understanding here. So yeah, if you want to try and find that, I'll give you a chance. And what he played was also still leading to an advantage for black. He played c6, which I kind of expected that. And then after knight e3, he's going to play d5. That's his main idea, just to open up everything for the bishops. But actually, this is really, really strong. Bishop takes d5. The main point is black is going to follow up with bishop f4, and there's really nothing white can do to avoid having his pawns doubled here. The bishop takes g3 and f takes g3. And that resulting position, I think, is going to be like close to winning for black, because like basically white has, white's bishop is going to be stuck behind all of black's pawns. So all those pawns on dark squares, they're just going to restrict this bishop. This is going to be a protected pass pawn in the center, and white's kingside pawns are not going to do anything here. They're going to be doubled, so blacks will easily hold them off. And I mean, yeah, like there's really nothing I can do. Like even if it's even hard for me to defend this because. Yeah, I mean, I guess I could play queen d3, but even here, bishop takes g3 is possible. Actually, hold on. Here, what was, there was a reason I was looking at this, I didn't really like it. But yeah, maybe I don't remember. Maybe just queen g5. Because the problem is if this king ever moves, then black is going to take this, and this position is just going to be really bad. So, even if you're able to win this pawn, I mean, like that might be possible here. Bishop f4, like, or even rook takes a5. I mean, even this, this is going to start losing a lot of time. Black can already consider like h5, and if you move the king, then black is going to get the pawn back in g3. So yeah, I saw this. I really was not optimistic about it, but I figured he probably wouldn't play it because he had been really guarding this bishop on e6. He had been so reluctant to ever take this before that I figured he's not going to do it now. So he played c6 instead. This is still good. And yeah, I offered a draw after knight e3, which thankfully he accepted. I really was not happy with the way things were going if he had played d5, because, I mean, he's opening up the position for the bishops. If I take this, then the rook is coming down to c2. This would be a disaster. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, black can keep gaining space. He played d4, and then bring the knight to c5. It's just kind of like all of black's pieces are suddenly coming to life here after this bishop d8 move, and then yeah, suddenly queen g6, bishop g5, and yeah, this is exactly how you should play with the bishops. Like even if you have to play some ugly move like bishop d8, I mean, these bishops, they can uncoil. They can spring back to life from like the back rank in just a couple of moves. So yeah, in this position after knight d3, I offered a draw, and it's always a bit of a difficult question for me when I offer a draw. So like I would never offer a draw to a higher rated player if I was white here, because I know the higher rated player is not going to take it. But okay, here, I mean, I'm outrating my opponent by about 200 and something points. So yeah, I mean, I figured there might be a chance that he takes it. And I would, advise you, if a higher rated player offers you a draw, like especially if the gap is more than 200 points, the only reason they would offer you a draw is if they don't like their position, or if they know the game is just going to be a draw and they have no chance of winning. Like, if it's like some trivial end game, like rook and 3 versus rook and 3 all on the same side, and it's just a dead draw, if they just know it's a draw, they'll just offer you a draw. Or if they really don't like their position and they don't want to risk losing, then they'll offer you a draw. But either way, like I would advise like not taking draw offers against higher rated players, because really, like, there's no need to. They wouldn't have offered you the draw unless they felt like they might lose. And I can tell you, when I do offer draws to lower rated players, and when I'm worse, and they reject my draw offer, that's like a really, annoying psychological thing to deal with. So, it takes a little bit of courage, and I've definitely been in my opponent's shoes before. you know, I've been in his situation against a much higher rated player who's offered me a draw, but yeah, you just kind of have to work up that courage to just trust yourself and say, no draws, we're gonna play this out and see what happens. So, all right, so yeah, so far 1.5 out of 3. It was a bit of a slow start, and yeah, I think the next several rounds we're starting to kind of turn in the opposite direction. I started playing pretty well, so we'll look at round 4 in the next video.